I also want to let people know that there is captioning being provided, so hopefully you can access that if you need that. Um, Welcome to Introduction to College Disability Services. Again, my name is Dave Ballman with the Wisconsin Center for the Blind and Visually Impaired. Happy St. Patrick's Day to everybody. We have three guests here today from Molly Grody from Blackhawk Technical College, Amanda Fedrowski from UW-Whitewater, and Leslie Stilson from the McBurney Center at UW-Madison. So this is going to be a panel discussion, and I will ask questions, and we will go around and let each person answer the question. And we'll open it to, if you have questions, you can type them in the chat, and we'll also open up people's microphones at the end to ask questions. So, panelists, if you could please introduce yourself and share your job title and where you work. Who wants to go first?
I can go first. Actually, so this is Amanda Podrosky. I work at Blackhawk Technical College.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's not a problem. So I'm the Access and Accommodations Coordinator here at BTC. I'm also I'm also the Title IX Coordinator for pregnancy. Actually, I just became the Deputy Title IX Coordinator, and I do the pregnancy accommodations as well.
Okay.
Thanks.
Thank you. Molly?
Hey everyone, my name is Molly. I am over at UW-Whitewater at their Center for Students with Disabilities. I am a disability service coordinator. I'm one of 8 in the office, and I am also the assistive technology specialist.
Thank you. Leslie?
Hi there. My name is Leslie Stilson. I use she, her pronouns, and I am a senior access consultant at the McBurney Disability Resource Center at University of Wisconsin-Madison. Just a quick visual and identity description. If it supports anybody, I identify as a blind white woman. I have kind of longer blonde hair, and I'm wearing a bright pinkish coral top today, and really glad to be with everybody.
Thank you. So please give a brief summary of what services you provide and how do students go about obtaining support services. So why don't we stick with the same order? So,
Okay. So this is
Amanda.
Amanda again from BTC. So the services that I provide are meeting with students to learn about and to obtain and create accommodation plans for reasonable accommodations at the college level. But we also work with students in the high school setting as well, doing a lot of different transition activities. That might look like me going into the high schools to present information, those students coming to one of BTC's campuses for tours, excuse me, things like tech exploration days, and then working closely as those students are approaching, if they plan to attend BTC, helping them with that application and enrollment process. And then once students are at the college, the process that is followed to obtain those accommodations would be to present documentation and then have a meeting with me. And then students choose which accommodations they want to implement in which settings at the college through a request process. It can take, depending on the time of year, it can take 1 week up to, generally I say 2 to 3 weeks if we're in a really busy start of a semester. It can take a little bit longer, but I do my best. I'm an office of 1, and I have a part-time person who works with me 4 days a week. So
Thank you. Molly?
Mhm.
Hi everyone, it's Molly from UW-Whitewater again. So here at UW-Whitewater, we provide a plethora of services going anywhere from alternative media to classroom services to testing accommodations, housing accommodations if you choose to live on campus. And the really nice thing about our office is our accommodations apply whether you are at the Whitewater main campus or at the Rock County campus. And we do have a shuttle that goes from the Whitewater campus to Rock County back to Whitewater. So if any student does want to live on the Whitewater main campus and attend Rock classes, they're able to, or if they can get to the Rock campus and they need transportation to the Whitewater campus, we're able to provide that at no cost as well. We also have a summer transition program for all incoming students. We primarily market this for incoming freshmen, but we have opened it up to other students as well who would benefit. It is a 4-week program where students take 2 different classes for credits. So it's 7 credits over 4 weeks, and it's basically a crash course on how to college. We teach you how to study, how to take notes, how your accommodations work in college. You get to live on campus for 4 weeks. And so it really eases a lot of the anxiety of being on campus and getting your accommodations set while it's a smaller controlled environment. And then one of the other big services that we provide is adaptive transportation. So we have a program called Warhawk Wheels that will provide you transportation around campus. So pick you up from your dorm room, drop you off at your class, as well as you can sign up for off campus as well. So if you want to go to Quick Trip or Walmart, they're able to drive you there if you don't have transportation. We also do some outreaching where we go into the high school to answer any questions. We also, I work very closely with the ECCP program, the Early Credential College program, where high school students are able to take college classes here on campus, where you would receive accommodations through our office. We've had a handful of students do that as well. And similar to Amanda over at Blackhawk, it takes about a week to 2 weeks to get in. We're not an office of one. So we're able to get you guys in, but I do primarily work with any student who has any sort of assistive technology need, just because that's my specialty and it's just easier to have you guys with me from the start. So I really work on making sure you guys get in right away. And then from there, once you filled out all the necessary documentation, we can do one-on-one check-in meetings throughout the semester. We have special project assist tutoring for one-on-one tutoring for students that helps focus on executive functioning. And we really start offering all that we can to you guys.
Just a quick follow-up question, Molly, about the Warhawk's transportation. Is there a charge for that, or is that included with tuition?
So there is a charge for it, but I will say if a student is working through DVR already, DVR has been very great about picking up that cost.
Thank you. Leslie?
Great. This is Leslie at UW-Madison. Similar to my colleagues here on the panel, the McBurney Disability Resource Center is going to help support students with accommodations for their learning, their living, or other accessing any kind of campus programming based on disability. It all starts with an application for services to our office. Folks will apply through the McBurney Center website that I did drop in the chat. And then once a student is applying for services, you'll be assigned to work with an access consultant. We do have, similar to Whitewater, we do have one access consultant named Todd who primarily supports students with adaptive technology. So likely folks will be able to work with Todd, but there are 15 other access consultants at our office. So we are generalists and we support students on a variety of different needs. But when there's adaptive technology involved, usually you're working more closely with my colleague Todd. You'd start with an initial meeting with an access consultant where you'll discuss any access barriers, kind of what works, what doesn't, what strategies you are using. And then with your access consultant, they'll guide that conversation and really understand what those barriers are and those needs are and how they're applicable to here to our campus. So a disability is then determined, and accommodations are considered on what's reasonable and what would work here for you in the context of UW-Madison. We do review documentation, and we can talk a little bit more about what that looks like, but that's part of the process too, self-report as well as any review of documentation that helps support making a decision on what's going to be accommodations that'll be supportive for you. We do provide all kinds of accommodations, whether it's for the learning environment within the classroom, formats of materials, like alternative formats, audio, Braille, enlarged print. We also do a lot of testing accommodations around extending time or modifying the environment to be limited distractions. Also housing accommodations if there's any access barriers in the living situation. And then any accommodations around accessing or getting around campus. So campus does have many services in place already. There is public transportation that a lot of students use. We're a very large campus, but there's also an accessible circulator shuttle that is free and available to any campus visitor, and it will provide door-to-door service or transportation from campus building to campus building. So it's kind of, I think about it like a mini paratransit. If you're familiar with paratransit, Madison also does have a city Madison Metrobus paratransit that folks can apply to travel around the county. Well, Madison proper, but it does extend a little bit further into the county. So as for the timeline, that certainly can vary. Generally speaking, students will be able to apply and request an appointment within up to 3 weeks. Our really high volume times, which is the beginning of the fall semester, although I would certainly recommend applying for services well before you start school. But if it's in that really high volume time, it could be up to 3 weeks when you might get an appointment, but otherwise it's generally within a week or two as well, like my other colleagues here. So that process for getting in and meeting with an access consultant and going through that initial eligibility process can turn around, within just a week or two. Yeah, I think that covers what I wanted to share.
Thank you, Leslie. I think all of you kind of addressed the timeline, which is the next question, but well, I'll combine the next two questions. So what is the timeline for applying and what can students expect? And then along with that, what type of documentation is required for the application process? So Amanda, back to you.
Thanks. Okay, so I just want to make sure I cover everything. So the timeline, I kind of touched on a little bit. Again, during our busy times, it can take maybe up to 3 weeks, but generally, anywhere from 1 to 3 weeks. Blackhawk has a free application for our college, and we accept anyone who applies, basically. From then on, once you've submitted an application, students, can provide documentation at any point in the process or at any time that they're enrolled at the college. Generally, that documentation comes to me or my assistant for me to review. I can do that review of the documentation before, scheduling a meeting, but the documentation, the meeting, and then creating that plan are the most important pieces. I'll accept any type of documentation. Generally, we're looking for something from a qualified healthcare professional with their contact information, things like the onset maybe of the disability, the type. Definitely want to have a DSM sort of diagnostic code that goes along with that. And then any type of, functional limitations or prognosis. The more information, the better. IEPs, 504 plans. My previous career was working as a high school special education teacher. So, reading through IEPs and looking at the narratives and the descriptions, different types of neuropsych testing results
Our
and things
office
along
hours
that
are
nature.
8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. Monday through Thursday.
Students, after they apply, often they'll have to do placement testing. Then they have to attend an ARROW, our advising registration and onboarding process. All of those activities can be accommodated. So if a student needs an interpreter for the in-person ARROW, so once I meet with the student, we create that accommodation plan. I go through the process with them. We have students request their accommodations, which I kind of mentioned earlier. We also offer a bridge program similar to what was mentioned at Whitewater. We'll tour the students around. And did I cover everything? I feel like I'm forgetting something. Students have to meet with me though, and I think that's like the hardest part for them sometimes to understand is they'll submit documentation and think that's it. So that's kind of where the process can be more difficult. Helping them understand that if they cancel an appointment the week before classes are starting, it's going to delay them, and helping them understand that the accommodations aren't retroactive. They don't go back in time, and that request form is kind of like a mini FERPA release. It gives us permission to communicate with the instructors that the student has applied for the accommodations, and these are the ones that they'd like to implement in their class. Other than that, basically, part of why I took this job here is specifically for transitioning and supporting students in the college setting, in the high school setting to go to college.
Nice. A quick follow-up question. So when students apply, are they eligible until they graduate, or do they have to apply every semester? Or reapply, I should say.
Reapply for their accommodations?
Yeah.
That's what the request process is. So students, their plan stays on file, and then each semester or for summer terms, they fill out a request form, listing the courses that they want to implement the specific accommodations in. So that's every semester. If they happen to change instructors, we also follow the same policy for students who are pregnant under Title IX. That's how they request. But that accommodation plan is a living document. Sometimes students, present with new documentation. And so we go back and review those plans and make updates or changes as needed.
Right. Thank you. Molly?
Hi, it's Molly from Whitewater. So for our timeline and process, really for accommodations in our office, is I highly encourage students to, once they're admitted into the university, to head to our website and fill out our application. We call it an application, but it's more of a questionnaire. We never deny students, but it's a questionnaire for us to get to know you. You're then paired with a disability service coordinator, and then you and that disability service coordinator figure out a time to have your initial meeting, or what we call your intake meeting. During your intake meeting, we discuss all things related to your disability, how it affects you in the classroom, how it affects you in your living situation, your organization, what needs do you need, what worked really well in high school, what didn't work really well in high school, or maybe there was a gap in between high school and coming here. So what have you learned from that? And just trying to paint the best picture that we can. As far as documentation wise, we do require something on file, but we do follow very closely the social justice model and the self-identification. So we accept everything from an IEP 504, a screenshot of a My Chart, a one sentence thing from a doctor because it's all you can get your hands on. If students are not able to get their hands on any sort of documentation, we go ahead for that social justice model and we just have that conversation with them. And then we can help them get services that they may need on campus, either through our health and counseling center for any sort of mental health diagnosis or through our wellness center for any sort of other diagnosis. And so once you have your intake meeting and you have that living document of your accommodation plan, you are good to go in our system. That stays with you for as long as you're at Whitewater. So even if you take a year off and you come back, or let's say you take a couple years off and come back for a master's, it's still active in our system. We can change it at any point you need, modify it any chance you need. We can make sure that it fits you for that semester and continue to do that. Similar at Blackhawk is we have students request their accommodations through our portal each semester. So they don't necessarily have to reapply for services, but it sends out that notification to professors that, hey, this is a student who receives services through our office. Here are their listed approved accommodations. And then we always advocate for the students to discuss with their professors as much as they feel comfortable with, and building that connection with each one of their professors to make sure they know what accommodations they have and what that's going to look like in the classroom. And then we also help with that advocation piece as well to make sure that the students feel comfortable advocating for themselves, whether it's in housing or the classroom or anything like that. Anything I didn't touch on?
I think you're good. Thank you. Leslie?
Wonderful. So this is Leslie at UW-Madison. Lots of similarities. I'll sort of start with timeline and go back a bit and encourage, especially for services at UW-Madison, we've strongly encouraged students to apply as soon as possible. So I guess similarly, as soon as you are admitted and you know you're coming to UW-Madison, submitting that application so that we can start supporting you with the process. I would say even if you are not committed yet or you're considering coming to UW-Madison, the timeline, I would encourage the timeline to include a visit. Connect with our office. You wouldn't, without being an enroll or a matriculated or an admitted student, we won't be able to formally get all your services in place. However, it can be incredibly helpful to have what we call a prospective student meeting at the McBurney Center, so that we can start having those conversations and anticipating alongside you what you might encounter. So what you're at those meetings, again, prospective student meetings, you can talk a bit about what strategies you use, what format text you use. Are you a Braille user on paper, and how does that translate to being here at UW-Madison, or your navigational skills, or that kind of thing. So those can be really useful meetings that the timeline kind of starts the timeline. But then again, once you're admitted and you know you're coming, definitely start that application process. So again, I mentioned this earlier, but a little off the topic of the question, the previous question. So I'll just repeat that you will be assigned to work with an access consultant and have that initial meeting. Similarly to Blackhawk and Whitewater, you're going to share more about you and what works, and again, also what hasn't. And really be able to get an understanding of what accommodations we can help support you with. As for once you are enrolled as a student and starting classes, there's certainly, depending on what type of either adaptive technology or format of materials that you need, some of those things start fairly early so that we can support in getting you access to materials that you need, or navigation support. Housing accommodations need to be in really early, like for instance, May of prior to starting in a fall semester. And then once that's all situated and you start out the semester, we also have an online portal that students request their accommodations every semester. So you have full access to decide whether you're going to use your academic accommodations or not. And you make those selections online and submit those, which is going to notify each instructor of your approved accommodations so they can implement those along with us, depending on the accommodations, if it's materials, in a different format or things like that, we're going to have to closely work with instructors as well. But each semester, it's a new, you have a new set of classes, and so accommodation requests come in early in the semester by you as the student making those selections. And then you can expect support from your access consultant throughout your time here at UW. You don't have to reapply for eligibility. Just that disability support and services are going to carry on, but as has also already been mentioned, anytime there's new changes, whether it's diagnostically or maybe we just now know more about what things are like here and can understand different access barriers, we can make modifications throughout your whole time and provide some advocacy and support to get you into a place where you're able to do what you need to do and be a student here. I think, and documentation is the other thing to mention. Similarly, we accept documentation of a large variety. You don't have to submit documentation prior to your initial meeting, and that can be discussed then at the initial meeting after you've applied and you're working with an access consultant. But certainly we accept IEPs, 504s, medical documentation, and a variety. My chart, we get a lot of screenshots of my chart visit, summaries and such. But we also, the McBurney Center has documents on our website called disability assessment forms. And there are a couple different ones. One is for general disability, which can include blind, low vision, chronic health conditions, or other physical disabilities. That is one disability assessment form a provider can fill out. There is also a separate disability assessment form for psychiatric disorders, and then a third and final one for ADHD specifically. So those can be documents that you can send along to your provider, and really just ask all the questions that we need and nothing more, based upon diagnosis, functional impacts, limitations, and kind of anticipated barriers in the academic setting. They may or may not know how to answer that particularly, but those can be a really useful resource as well.
Thank you, Leslie. One of the things that I always inform students and professionals on, I should have mentioned this before the documentation question, is the summary of performance. The summary of performance, for those who do not know, is part of the IEP that is required before students graduate, and it's a brief summary of academic performance, functional performance, and accommodations students used. And I've been told that college disability professionals really like these because it's a brief summary, and it's also a more recent summary. So students who are using a lot of different accommodations, it could talk about maybe minutes used for how much time is allowed for extra time for testing or things like that. So if you guys feel like addressing that in the next question, please do. And here's the next question. What advice would you give to potential college? Let me start over. What advice would you give to potential college students with a disability who have not yet chosen what school they will attend? Amanda?
Sure. I'm actually really glad you brought up the summary of performance. So as a former high school special ed teacher, the summary of performance was something that I took a lot of time putting together for students. It really allowed me to, like you said, provide, an updated, most recent evaluation assessment of a student's academic skills, their social emotional skills, their organization, functional skills. And also including, what is that student's career goal? What would they like to do? What do they envision themselves doing? What have they done in high school, maybe to explore that interest or that curiosity? And it can be more than one sometimes. And it is really nice to think that the student can look at their four-year high school career kind of, in this handout that they can give. And if they're, in a meeting at a college or they don't have the words to express, these are the things that worked at high school. These are the things I think I might need here. That summary of performance can be something that can be shared, to help promote that self-advocacy. So again, I appreciate you mentioning that.
Thank
And
you.
now I forgot the second half of the question.
What advice would you give to a potential college
Oh.
student who has not yet chosen what school they would like to attend?
Okay,
So
yeah.
maybe even looking back at like 10th or 11th grade, if somebody's just kind of thinking about like what are some things that they could do to kind of prepare?
Yeah, definitely. So I would say, getting out to those college campuses, even earlier on, BTC has a robust dual credit Start College Now program that allows students from junior, senior to come in our building and take classes or take classes at transcripted or advanced credit in the high school setting. So I think that's great for preparing for the academic rigor. That's kind of that first semester when freshmen come to us is really a high stakes semester where students may not be prepared for the amount of time that they need to spend studying, or there's going to be technology barriers because they use Google their entire time in high school, and we're a Microsoft Suite school. We use Blackboard for our LMS. So really getting out there, testing out, going to participating in college activities for any college that you might be interested, depending on your life circumstances. And then also kind of understanding that some of the things that were supports in high school don't necessarily always transition over to a specific disability accommodation, but that colleges offer universal supports and services for the success of all students, whether they disclose disability status or not. So understanding what those services are. My department's part of our care team, which is basically our non-academic resources for mental health, counseling and case management, well-being. Also, we have like a career closet, we have a student cupboard, student engagement. So I think all those aspects of college should be, kind of considered and looked at, and when deciding where to go and understanding that first semester, you're going to want to get that network that you had in high school rebuilt. So that you have some people to go to that you're comfortable with. If you get stuck or something happens and you're not understanding, like maybe you don't even know, what's the difficulty I'm having. So having that network built up as you're entering into that first semester, I think is really important as well.
Thank you, and thank you for mentioning dual enrollment. Molly?
Hi again, it's Molly from UW-Whitewater. As far as summary of performance, as a former special education teacher like Amanda, I love a good summary of performance when it gets sent to me. I really like that when the students know what's on their summary of performance specifically, so they're able to be like, hey, I've had this accommodation, for the last however many years. It really helps me. It helps me be able to successfully complete tests or X, Y, and Z. I also like it when the students have something in their IEP that they know doesn't work for them, because they're like, hey, I had this in high school, but I don't think it's going to matter to me in college, and having that conversation. So really the big thing is with summary of performances, especially students that are going into their junior year of high school, I really like them to start understanding why they have certain accommodations in their IEP and how it helps them. And then similar with Amanda is also having those conversations around the junior year of what services aren't feasible in college. So for example, in high school, modifications are allowed. In college, we're not allowed to modify assessments, curriculum, anything like that. We're allowed to accommodate, so extra time, low distraction room, having it read out loud to you, but we're not allowed to take out certain questions or modify what the homework looks like or anything like that. So that's usually a big change over from high school to college. And so having that expectation kind of set their junior year, I think is really important for them as well. Some advice I would give for students who have not chosen a school yet is go visit a bunch of them. Even if you don't even know if you're going to like the campus, if you're going to like the college, go look. Because every campus is going to offer something just a little bit different, and you're going to find where you belong. Some students prefer a smaller campus. Some students prefer a really large campus. Some students prefer certain disability services over. They really like to have that one-on-one, the check-in availability, their person. Other students are like, hey, I can email you once a year and I'm cool with that. So finding where your comfort level is and just getting out and exploring. And also don't be stuck on certain things. Obviously accessibility is huge, but maybe just because you don't like the one dorm room that, out of 13 buildings, doesn't mean that whole campus should be taken off the list. So just make sure you go in with an open mind and ask a lot of questions. Everybody at a university, at a college, is here for the student. So we are here to help you understand and get you connected to the right people.
Awesome. Thank you. Leslie?
Gosh, it's hard going third after after both of you. You're covering such wonderful things. But this is Leslie at UW-Madison. I think it's worth echoing that documentation, summary of performance. I would say yes, great, but absolutely with what Molly shared, having that interactive process, the documentation is always going to be supplemental for us. We do need some of it, but having that self-reported kind of interactive process alongside the student, alongside you to understand all the things that have already been mentioned, what works, what doesn't, but also how that's going to look and feel and be possible and reasonable at the university level. So that's why that conversation, that initial meeting can be really helpful along with the access consultant to talk about those types of things. So I don't think I'll say much more about that. And I really do want to echo and emphasize my advice would be to visit, absolutely visit. If you're able to go to that campus, give it a try. I think about college it's like clothing, it's something that's got to fit you. It has to suit you. and you're going to be there for as long as you're going to be there. So it's really important to realize that all colleges look good on paper. That's what they're designed to do, but they might not fit you just right. So I also, one thing I'll say is go in multiple seasons if you're able. Oftentimes folks do summer visits and you're probably not going to be in school much over the summer. So we often get students that are shocked and horrified by weather that we're getting, like the major blizzard we just had yesterday. So because they never came to UW-Madison in the winter or fall or spring, which is basically winter. So yeah, check out the spaces, physical access. You know, I say walk around, feel the crowds. UW-Madison's a really, really big school. And if you are walking around at class change, you're going to be in hordes of people. Is that okay? Is that something you're like, yeah, I love this, or this is horrible, I would never manage this? That's totally up to you. Eat the food, and think about where you're going to spend your energy. I think advice to give prospective students would be that you are going to spend a lot of energy you're not used to spending on different things in college. It's just a very different experience. UW is really big. That means it has lots of opportunities and resources. It also requires a lot of energy to learn all those things, and maybe that excites you. Like Molly said, maybe you really love the idea of a big urban school. Then that's where a lot of your energy is going to be spent, and that's exciting for you. But that might not be where you want to spend your energy. So I think, making that decision, visiting, having that prospective student meeting with our folks here at the McBurney Center, so that you can not only get a sense of what the campus is like, but also the accommodations that you're used to using, as has already been mentioned. Do those translate? And are they scalable too? So that may be another thing to start thinking about, that I can address also for students that have committed to a university or to a college. But you may come in saying, I know what works for me. I am a Braille paper, Braille print paper. Why can I not speak today? I use Braille on paper. That's what I use. Period. That always works for me. And then we have to think about, okay, that is great that it works for you, but is that scalable at the university level when you're going to be doing 3 to 5 times as much volume of stuff, So those kinds of conversations start so that you can really familiarize yourself to what is your college have to offer as you make your decision. Does it fit? Does it work for you? Do you like it? And certainly, are they access? Is it accessible? Yeah, that's where I'll leave it. I could go on and on, but I won't.
Thank you, Leslie, and I apologize for, okay, I'll switch up the order a little bit here. So the next question is, I think you guys addressed this pretty much kind of in the timeline and things like that, so maybe we can just keep it short, and then I have 2 more questions about learning media and ordering accessible materials. So hopefully we'll have time for questions at the end. But so for this question, and we'll start with you, Leslie, what advice would you give to somebody who has decided on what college they're going to attend? So assuming it's your college, and what type of things do they need to do to be prepared for when they begin?
Okay, great. Well, you get to hear my voice again. This is Leslie at UW-Madison. My advice would be for a committed student would be very similar. The hope is that you've already visited once, and then we're going to encourage you to come again. The reason for that is now you are going to be getting enrolled in class, registered for classes. That happens. I'll kind of combine all the questions on kind of what timeline and what to expect. Once you're admitted, a lot of things happen in intervals. So if you're going to live on campus at UW-Madison, you're not required to, but many students do their first year. Do you need any housing accommodations? Housing contracts are submitted at the beginning of May that you're committing to live on campus. And that's when we should, if you have any access barriers to your living situation, mobility, disabilities, or needs around roommate, or if you have chronic health conditions where you need access close proximity to a bathroom, whatever the case may be, those accommodations need to happen soon in the process. So by May. Once you've committed, you'll be filling out that kind of stuff, doing all of that. We'd like you to come and meet with us again to help support you with figuring out how to get around campus. You'll register for classes. We would certainly help support you with doing walkthroughs, identifying where your classes are, encourage you to get on the bus, get used to kind of navigating around our large campus. UW-Madison spans a little over, I don't know, around 1.5 miles square, about 1.5 square miles. It's a little over 900 acres. It's an urban campus. There's 12 schools and colleges within the university. So it's a big space and lots to learn and lots to navigate. There's also, it's centered around a really large hill, Bascom Hill. So sometimes that can be an access barrier. Buses are very commonly used. That can be a really helpful thing to get comfortable with prior to starting. So a visit over the summer could be really helpful. Once you're registering for classes, you can also get a sense of where you're going and what to do. I do advise students on doing that. It's also really helpful, I think, for students once they've committed but haven't arrived yet to start getting really comfortable with how you're going to do the school thing. So maybe that's note taking, thinking about how am I going to take notes in a class? Am I going to use a tablet? Am I going and refreshable braille? Am I going to use a laptop, screen reader? Getting comfortable and familiar with all of the kind of technology that you might be using. And then also practicing, are you comfortable with your navigation skills? We talked a little bit about that on the visit, but just maybe spending some time prior to coming, getting yourself more squared away and feeling comfortable with what you might need to be accessing around your own navigational strategies and skills. And then I also encourage life skills like, laundry, finding, making food. We have lots of dining halls. I don't know, maybe 5, 6, 7 eateries on campus that would be part of your, if you're living on campus with us, part of your kind of room and board. So lots of access to food, but maybe, kind of thinking about that or practicing some of your independence around that. And also, one of the big advices that I often wish I could access students prior to them coming, and so I'll say it in this zone, is thinking about and practicing time management strategies and some independent strategies before coming to campus, learning about what kind of calendar you're going to use, reminders, alarms, that's true for any college student. But I would also say when you're using accommodations, especially those that might be adaptive technology, alternative formats to text, those all require a lot more coordination and advanced planning. So the timeline, for instance, if you're using audio or braille format, or we need to get anything in a digital format for you as an accommodation, we need access to your classes in advance. We need access to your syllabi and really partnering with you as the student on knowing what materials are we going to be using so that we can make them accessible to you. Because once you start your semester, it moves really fast. We want you to be ready to launch at the start of the semester, not be starting the process of, piecing together we can only get you one chapter at a time in a digital format because we didn't get access to your classes until a week before the class started. So things like that. So I feel like time management is something everyone needs to work on, but around kind of the access labor of certain accommodations, there are definitely timelines to coordinate as well. So kind of practicing thinking ahead and planning, and being comfortable with tools and strategies that are available to you. Lots to do over the summer, and it's just suggestions or advice, because all college students are learning these things as they go too. So it's not like you have to come completely prepared, but a little understanding of it could be supportive.
Awesome. Thank you. Let's go to you, Amanda.
Okay, so I guess I would say to these students, see yourself as a college student. You belong there. Understand that you are going to have to self-advocate, and understand that you're going to be out of your comfort zone. College is not compulsory compared to high school. So to the best of our ability, college resources are, shown to you. Reach out to you if you're struggling. There's many, many ways that the college will try to support you, but you have to be willing to accept that support, understand who your people are, and have those words, or be able to say, hey, I don't know how to do this in front of other people, because like was already mentioned, everyone starting out at college for the first time is going to be out of their comfort zone. It's a new setting, a new system, a new situation. So just going into it, being open-minded, but also understanding that you really are the driver of the outcomes that, happen for you in college. And if that first semester doesn't go well, the ability to reflect, on what didn't work, and then keep at it, have that grit, and come back and keep trying.
Awesome. Thank you, Molly.
Hi, it's Molly from Whitewater again. I always tell my students that when it comes to your senior year, you really need to start practicing your independence, your self-advocacy skills, your time management skills. Might as well learn how to do it when you're in a safe environment your senior year. You have that support you've built. You're in the comforts of all that before you get to an unknown island and you're left by yourself to try to figure it out. As Amanda was saying, a lot of the times they're used to high school counselors, teachers reaching out to them. We don't know if you're struggling unless you tell us. So making sure you have that time management, your technology like the back of your hand, because I may be able to help, but I don't know it as good as you. Having those independent skills and just being ready to truly, be on your own. And of course, we're here to help you. We're here to support you. But it's a big change coming from high school. And I think a lot of students, they hear it and then they get here and they live here for about 5 days and then they realize it. So learning how to be uncomfortable is a really good thing. And then also practicing those really important skills in your comfortable, safe environment.
Thank you. All right, let's start with you, Molly, since you're already on the podium, so to speak. We're running short of time, and I want to thank all three of you. This has been awesome, and we can continue past 12:30 if you guys have the time, but I completely appreciate if you have commitments. So I think I'm going to combine these last two questions. So what learning media system does your school use, and are students expected to know how to use it, or can they expect training? And then the last question is, how do students go about ordering accessible textbooks? So Molly?
Here at UW-Whitewater, the general campus uses Microsoft, so Outlook as an email. And then we also use Canvas as our learning system. So we don't use Google Classroom, which throws a lot of the high schoolers off. Canvas is very similar. And then for us specifically at the Center for Students with Disabilities, we use our accommodation portal is called ARP. And then we have two different programs that we use, Kurzweil, which is a text-to-speech technology, and Genio, which is an electronic note-taking assistance technology. We provide training on our systems, so ARP, Kurzweil, and Genio. You can have trainings and as many trainings as you need. We also, for our students, I would highly recommend, if you are nervous about technology use, Outlook, Canvas, things like that, I highly recommend our summer transition program because it really is a rundown on how to use this technology. The freshman orientation does a pretty good job teaching you guys, or teaching the freshmen how to use it, but you can always ask us for help. And then in terms of accessible textbooks, so we offer wide variety, physical braille, digital, text-to-speech. Basically, if you need it, we'll figure it out in some context. But that would look like putting in a request through our system, much like requesting accommodations for classes. You go ahead and request your textbooks and everything like that. It gets sent to our wonderful alternative media team that I run, and we are a proud staff of 3. So we get that, we get those and we put, try to turn them out as quickly as possible. I say usually during our busy seasons and like in fall, it takes about 2 weeks, especially if we need to contact a publisher. A lot of the times we do have them on hand so we can turn them out pretty quickly. But if it's any sort of digital conversions that would need to be done, it takes about a week to 2 weeks.
Thank you, Molly. Let's go back to you, Leslie.
Okay, great. I have a similar report on some of the services and systems we use. Like Whitewater, our learning management system is Canvas, so also no Google Classroom. And in regards to how students can get support with Canvas, generally speaking, I always encourage students, once they are registered for classes, they can, and they have what we call their net ID and all of their campus login information, I encourage students to check out Canvas and just get oriented to it. Especially if you're using a screen reader, I do myself. Sometimes, you know, I need extra time to get acquainted with Canvas, but it would be accessible once you do have your login information. There might not be a lot of course information in there over the summer, but still available to orient. We also use Microsoft 365, Outlook. We are a Microsoft campus. And then our accommodation request system that you would select your accommodations each semester, we call McBurney Connect. And then we also, for students that use audio text-to-speech, if they're used to having information read aloud, even if they have teachers read out exams orally, we typically don't have oral readers, but students have access to Kurzweil, the education system that reads from text-to-speech for digital information. And then we also provide accommodations, note-taking accommodations through Genio, which was mentioned by Molly. And in regards to accessible textbooks, you would be making your accommodation requests through McBurney Connect once you are enrolled in your classes. Doing that as soon as possible is really important. We have hundreds of requests each semester, and our alternative formats team is working hard to gather information from a publisher, make sure that any digital content is accurate, remediated. We'll remediate PDFs so that they're accurate and high quality. So all that takes some additional service time. And students are generally encouraged to, as soon as they are registering for classes, which for your first freshman year, if you're starting in the fall, that would be in the summer, and we'd encourage you sign up for an orientation to register your classes in June so we can start on your materials. We partner with instructors to make sure we can get access to all the materials and start getting those in the format that you need. And then throughout the rest of your time here, you'll register for classes in November for spring classes. So shortly thereafter, we're going to start working on your materials, and you'll register in April for summer or spring classes. So I'm not going to share exactly how fast the turnaround is, because if it's an urgent thing, we can piecemeal alternative formats together, but generally speaking, as much time as humanly possible is recommended to get you access to your adaptive textbooks.
Thank you, Amanda.
So very similar to what's already been shared at BTC, our learning platform is Blackboard, and students, we have a 4-day transition opportunity for students before the fall semester starts, where they can have time learning about and becoming comfortable on that platform. We also use Kurzweil for test reading. We can assign students Kurzweil accounts so that they can access that from the web, from anywhere basically. I always make sure and spend time going over the built-in accessibility features that are available on the LMS and Blackboard, that are available in Microsoft Office Suite. We also offer a pass course for freshman students coming in, or any student coming in that might need that extra, very structured course structured review of the different services that are available on campus, which includes learning how to navigate Blackboard, learning how to navigate the MyBTC portal. And then for our alt media, follows a very similar process where students request that alt media, like any other type of accommodation. And then very similarly, the office of me looks for that alternate text. I often reach out to my colleagues as well if I'm not finding that. So yeah, very similar process as well. And I think I got all of them.
Thank you. Thank all of you so much. It's so much information. This is awesome. Do we have any questions?
We do have a question in the chat, and Molly did answer for Whitewater, but Megan asked, is there a specific Braille note-taking device that works best with your learning platforms? And Molly did answer that there is not a specific Braille note-taking device, but they have worked with students who have a variety, and she has linked the disability services at UW-Whitewater in the chat.
Thank you.
So I can jump in for BTC similarly. Sorry. There's nothing specific, but I will say that collaborating, particularly with the Wisconsin School for the Blind and Visually Impaired staff there, I'm actually learning a lot about assistive technology. So although we don't have anything specific, definitely willing to try what works, learn what doesn't work, and do whatever we can to make that possible.
Thank you.
And this is Leslie at UW-Madison. I don't have much to add other than, having familiarity is going to be key. So if you're, and we're always going to try to, we say kind of meet in the middle. I don't know if the middle is quite the right measurement, but, work with what a student is working with and is proficient and confident with, and I try to just set the context to knowing that, think about how things might be scalable. If the amount of information that you're reading is going to go up about 3 to 5 times, and thinking about the amount of writing that you're going to be doing and using a computer or some kind of device that can sort of do it all on a scalable, high volume context. So, but I do not think your first semester of college is the time to start something brand new either, unless what you're currently using is just absolutely not going to work. So it's sort of a balance of start, if it's early enough, start trying things that are going to be scalable and functional in a university setting. We don't have any recommendations of that, but also, you know, I don't recommend making a whole 180 and trying something brand new in the transition to college, if at all possible.
Thank you. Do we have any more audience questions?
There's no, Jean says, do you allow large print or is digital always encouraged for that purpose?
This is Leslie at UW-Madison. I would say large print is certainly something we would accommodate, but I find it most prevalent for exams. So increasing the font for an exam. As for text, digital, like enlarging the text and the font is going to be more scalable, I would say. When we think about the volume of textbooks and that a student is going to be reading and having access to. So if they want printed out large print, enlarged text, that's something we can support with. Recommend you know, getting a student a print card so that they can print out their text in the font that they need. But I would say most practically speaking, students are finding it's more scalable to have digital text and enlarge it to the font that they need. I hope that answers the question if I understood it.
Yep, thank you. Anybody else want to address that?
So
I
for
would go
UW, oh, sorry, Amanda. For UW-Whitewater, same thing as Leslie. We're absolutely able to do large print, but I will say the majority of students preferred using the digital. It's less bulky, easier to move around, but we are able to do it if a student prefers it.
Okay.
And I would echo all of those responses as well for BTC.
Thank you.
There's no other questions in the chat. Does anyone else have a question? Megan says, thank you. This was wonderful.
If anybody wants to unmute next, ask a question, please feel free. Otherwise, thank you everybody for attending. As I said at the beginning, I will be sending out a list of resources along with the contacts for the 3 presenters. Thank you so much, all 3 of you. This was so awesome. I really appreciate your time.